Imagine walking into a room and coming face to face with the person who turned your whole world upside down. Not 5 years ago. Not in a dream. Right now, in real life. And then imagine your little girl tugging your sleeve and whispering, "Mommy, do you know her?" Claire Mason had built a life most people only dreamed about. Corner office, company car, a name that opened doors. But some doors, no matter how far you run, have a way of swinging back open. Before we get into this story, take a second to subscribe and hit that little bell so you never miss these. Drop a comment and tell me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you all. The hinges on the old building groaned as I pushed through the front entrance. I smoothed the front of my jacket and glanced at my watch. 2:50. Right on time. I had driven here 3 times in my head before actually doing it, and still, my hands weren't entirely steady on the steering wheel. That bothered me more than I wanted to admit. Claire Mason didn't get shaky. Claire Mason ran teams of 40 people, closed deals over cold coffee, and never once let her face give anything away. Today, though. Today felt different. Today felt like standing at the edge of something I couldn't quite see the bottom of. Lily walked beside me, her little sneakers squeaking against the pavement. She was 6.5 and absolutely certain that life was wonderful. She held my hand loosely, the way kids do when they're trusting but already distracted by everything around them. She had my dark eyes, but none of my hesitation. Where I saw exits, she saw entrances. "What's this place for again, Mommy?" "It's a community art center, baby. We're here to help them do more for the kids." I said it simply. Cleanly. But the truth was messier than that. I wasn't just here to write a check. I was here because somewhere along the way, I had traded warmth for ambition, and I had never quite stopped feeling the cold. The hallway smelled like paint and poster board and something faintly sweet I couldn't name. My heels clicked against the floor as we walked, and I noticed the walls were covered in artwork. Big, unself-conscious paintings made by small hands that didn't yet know the meaning of wrong. I used to make things like that. Before I decided that softness was a liability. A man in his 50s met us near the front office, a kind, unhurried smile on his face and a small smear of blue paint on his collar. He introduced himself as the director and thanked me twice before we'd even shaken hands properly. He was the kind of person who genuinely believed that giving children a place to create was one of the most important things you could do. Honestly, being near him made me want to be a little better. We followed him down the hall toward the main studio. Through the long window on the door, I could see children bend over their work, some laughing quietly, some completely absorbed, tongues pressed to corners of mouths in concentration. It was a good room. A warm room. And then I saw her. Same posture. Same quiet way of moving. Hair a little shorter now, and there were a few threads of silver in it that hadn't been there before, but still. Still her. Sophie Reed. Kneeling beside a young boy, guiding his hand gently across the canvas, saying something that made him smile with his whole face. My breath just stopped. For a split second I was 29 again, sitting at the kitchen table pretending to answer emails while she painted near the window, morning light catching the side of her face. And then the memory folded back up and I was standing in a hallway in a blazer I suddenly felt very overdressed in. "This is our lead instructor," the director said warmly, pushing the door open. Sophie Reed. She joined us 3 years ago and honestly, the program hasn't been the same since. The kids are crazy about her. She looked up slowly. And when her eyes found mine, the room got very quiet around the edges. She didn't say anything right away. Just looked at me the way you look at something you weren't sure was real. The small brush in her hand drifted downward and touched the floor without either of us hearing it land. Claire. One word. My name. She said it like she was testing it, like she wasn't sure it would hold. Sophie. I kept my voice level. Professional. It cost me something to do that. The children kept painting. Completely unbothered. There's something both grounding and heartbreaking about how children can exist so peacefully inside a moment that is quietly pulling an adult apart. Lily stepped forward, because of course she did. She had absolutely no idea that the woman in the paint-splattered apron had once been the most important person in my life. She just saw someone kind who made pretty things. "Hi. I really like your paintings," she said. "That one looks like a sunrise, but with more purple." Sophie looked down at her. And something moved across her face, something open and unguarded, before she got it under control. "Thank you," she said softly. "Purple sunrises are the best kind, I think." Her voice was gentler than I remembered. Rounded at the edges somehow. Like someone who had spent years choosing their words carefully around people who needed to feel safe. The director kept talking. Funding structures. Program goals. Enrollment numbers. I nodded at the right moments. But my attention kept drifting back to Sophie as she moved between the easels, leaning down here, adjusting a grip there, making each child feel like what they were doing was exactly right. She had always been good at that. Making people feel like they were enough. She was a little older now. We both were. There were small lines near her eyes that told the story of a lot of laughter, and maybe some nights that weren't so easy either. But she was still beautiful the way she had always been. Not loudly. Just quietly, undeniably beautiful. The kind that doesn't ask for your attention but gets it anyway. Still the only person who had ever made the rest of the world feel like background noise. The program currently serves around 50 children, the director was saying, his voice full of the kind of quiet pride that doesn't need an audience. Sophie has really changed things here. Not just the artwork. The confidence, the way these kids carry themselves now. It's something else. And then Sophie's voice, calm but firm, cut gently through his. "I just need a minute." "Excuse me." She walked past me close enough that I caught the familiar trace of her. Something floral, something earthy, something that was just entirely her. Her hands weren't steady. I noticed that. I noticed the way she held her shoulders like someone quietly trying to hold themselves together. The door fell shut behind her with a soft, clean click, and somehow that small sound was the loudest thing in the room. Lily watched her go. She didn't miss much, my daughter. "Mommy, why did she look sad when she saw you?" I opened my mouth and found nothing useful there. How do you answer that for a 6-year-old? How do you explain that sometimes you had something real and you were too frightened to keep it? That you told yourself you were being practical when really you were just afraid? That you chose a version of safety that turned out to be its own kind of loss? "I'm not sure, baby," I said quietly. But I was sure. I knew exactly what that look meant, because I had put it there. The meeting carried on. I signed where I needed to sign, said what I needed to say. The number on the check was more than they had asked for. Significantly more. The director's face went still for a moment, then lit up the way people's faces do when something genuinely good is happening to them. "Ms. Mason, this is extraordinary. We could expand the program. Bring in more children. Maybe even add another instructor." "Good," I said. "That's the idea." I meant it. But I also knew no amount of generosity could straighten the thing inside me that had been bent for 4 years. Lily had drifted away from my side, pulled by some invisible current towards Sophie's desk in the corner. She was up on her toes, peering at the loose sketches fanned across the surface with the deep seriousness only small children bring to things that interest them. "Mommy, look," she called. "She draws like the lady in your room." Everything in me went still. "What lady, sweetheart?" The director glanced up from his papers, sensing something shift without knowing what it was. "The one in the picture you keep in the drawer," Lily said. Completely at ease. Completely unaware. The one that makes you cry sometimes when you think I'm sleeping. Nobody moved for a moment. I had been so careful. I had believed, genuinely believed, that I had tucked all of that away somewhere Lily couldn't find it. The photograph. The quiet nights. The way certain songs could still reach right into the middle of me and squeeze. But children don't miss things. They just wait until the exact wrong moment to tell you so. Come here, please, Lily Bug. She skipped over, holding one of Sophie's charcoal sketches loosely in one hand. Two hands reaching upward toward a light source just outside the frame. Simple and searching and so completely Sophie that looking at it felt like something pressing on a bruise. Can we keep this one? It's really beautiful. We can't take her things, sweetheart. I carefully took it from her and set it back on the desk, trying not to look at it too long. It belongs to Ms. Reed. But she draws just like the lady you love. The words landed quietly. No drama. Just a 6-year-old saying a true thing the way 6-year-olds do. The director made a small sound and found something very important to organize on the table in front of him. I crouched down to Lily's level. My knees hit the paint-stained floor and I didn't care. What do you mean, the lady I love? Her eyes searched mine the way children's eyes do when they already know the answer and they're just waiting for you to catch up. From the story you never finished telling me. The one where you always stop before the end and then get quiet. She tilted her head. Is it her? Is that who it is? I couldn't speak for a second. She makes you look the way you look at those movies, Lily continued thoughtfully. Scared and happy and sad all at one time. Like when the people finally find each other again. Through the window I could see Sophie in the courtyard, arms folded around herself, looking at nothing in particular. Even from here I could see the tension in how she stood, the careful stillness of someone keeping themselves very controlled. She looked like she had been through something and come out the other side still standing, but not without it costing her. There were years in her posture that hadn't been there before. Mommy. Lily's small hand touched my cheek. Gentle as anything. Are you going to cry? No, I said. Mommy's okay. It wasn't entirely true. I was somewhere between the surface and not. Somewhere between the woman who ran a company and the woman who still kept a photograph in a drawer and sometimes, late at night, let herself feel the full weight of what she had walked away from. Can we stay? Lily asked. Eyes wide and hopeful. Can we stay and watch her teach? Please, Mommy. I want to learn how to make things like that. Real things. Beautiful things. Before I could answer, the door opened and Sophie walked back in. Her eyes were a little red around the edges, but her chin was up and her voice was composed when she spoke. I recognized that kind of composure. I had built the same thing in myself, layer by layer, over years of practice. The difference, I think, was that hers was to keep one specific person out. Mine was to keep everyone out. I'm sorry about that, she said to the director, professional and steady, her eyes landing everywhere in the room except on me. Shall we keep going? But Lily had already made her own decision. She walked straight up to Sophie with the easy confidence of someone who has never once considered that she might not be welcome. She looked up at her with those wide, dark eyes and said simply, "Will you teach me to paint?" Mommy says I'm pretty good but I want to be really good. Like you. Something in Sophie's face moved. She crouched down slowly until she was at Lily's level, and I watched her hands, just slightly unsteady, reach out and brush a strand of hair from my daughter's face. What's your favorite thing to draw? She asked softly. Families, Lily said, the way children say true things, simply and without ceremony. But mine always has a space in it. There's me and Mommy, but it feels like there's supposed to be someone else. Someone who makes Mommy laugh the way she does in the really old pictures. The room went very quiet. Sophie's eyes lifted and found mine over the top of Lily's head. And for just a moment, all the years between us got thin. I could see straight through them to the person I had been when I was with her, before I convinced myself that loving someone that much was something to be afraid of. Maybe, Sophie said, her voice catching just slightly on the word, we can figure that out together. It landed like something unfinished. Like a door left open just a crack. The director murmured something about checking on another group and slipped out quietly, leaving the three of us alone among the easels and the paintings and the children who paid us absolutely no attention. I should probably go, I said. I didn't move. Should you? Sophie stood slowly. She looked at me steadily, no anger in it, just something clear and tired and honest. Or are you going to do what you always do? That's not fair. Fair. She said it quietly, glancing once at Lily before keeping her voice even. Okay. Lily looked between us with careful, curious eyes, tracking the conversation she couldn't quite read. Mommy, she said, tugging my sleeve, why does she sound like that? Did you do something wrong? The question just sat there in the air. And the honest answer was yes. I had done something wrong. I had been handed something rare and real and I had put it down because holding it felt like too much risk. I had spent 4 years building a life that looked like success from every angle and felt like a very comfortable kind of hollow. Yeah, I had done something wrong. 3 days later I was back in the parking lot, both hands on the steering wheel, telling myself I was here to follow up on the funding. To make sure everything was being allocated properly. To be responsible and professional and thorough. I was not convincing myself at all. Inside, the afternoon class was well underway. Children were clustered around their easels, faces serious and focused, working with the total absorption that only kids and artists manage to pull off. The room smelled like paint and graham crackers and something warm and lived in. And there was Sophie. Moving between the easels in a long skirt that had paint on the hem, a white shirt that had clearly been through many art classes, hair twisted up and held in place with what looked very much like a spare paintbrush. A streak of blue on her cheekbone she hadn't noticed or didn't mind. Completely in her element. Completely herself. Seeing her like that still did something to my chest that I didn't have a professional term for. Mommy, you came back. Lily appeared at my elbow, practically vibrating. Ms. Reed is doing a lesson about choices today. It's really interesting. On the whiteboard at the front of the room, Sophie had written in her familiar handwriting, art is about choices. Every brushstroke is a decision. Every color tells a story. What story will you choose to tell today? I read it twice. Today we're painting about difficult choices, Sophie was telling the class, moving slowly through the rows of easels. Think about a time when you had to pick between two things that both mattered to you. It doesn't have to be huge. Maybe it was between two friends, or two things you wanted to do. Choices are part of life. And sometimes the hard ones are the ones worth thinking about. Her eyes found mine across the room as she said it. Held them for just a moment. Then moved on. The children bent over their papers. One girl painted 2 ice cream cones side by side, expression deeply conflicted. A boy drew a figure standing between a park and a house, the decision visible in every crayon line. And Lily, my quietly perceptive Lily, painted 2 figures on opposite sides of a gap, arms stretched toward each other, and a smaller figure standing between them with both arms open wide. I walked toward Sophie's desk slowly. Interesting lesson topic, I said. She didn't look up. Her pen moved carefully across a child's drawing, making small notes in the margin. Kids understand more than we give them credit for, she said. They see things clearly. They haven't learned yet how to talk themselves out of what's right in front of them. And what is it you're teaching them to see? She looked up then. And her eyes, when they met mine, were not soft. They were clear and steady and full of something that had been sitting there for 4 years. That some choices cost you things you can't get back. That some people, when it gets hard, when it gets real, they leave. The words were measured. Not shouted. Somehow that made them land harder. Sophie, don't. She stood. Papers slid from the desk and drifted to the floor and neither of us moved to pick them up. Don't say my name like that. Her voice dropped lower, aware of the children around us. Like we're still something. Like you have that kind of familiarity with me after 4 years of nothing. A few heads turned from the easels. She caught it immediately. Took a breath. Bent to collect the papers with hands that weren't quite steady, and when she straightened she had pulled herself back together. Can we talk somewhere quieter? I asked. There's nothing to say. There's everything to say. No. She looked at me directly. There was everything to say 4 years ago. You didn't want to say it then. You wanted to leave, so you left. You chose what you chose. The air between us felt tight. Around us the children painted on, their quiet murmuring a strange kind of backdrop to something that had been unfinished for years. Ms. Reed. A small voice broke through. Look what I made. Lily materialized beside us, holding her painting up with both hands and quiet pride. On the page, 2 figures stood on either side of a wide gap. One in a neat dark blazer. One in a flowing skirt covered in color. And in the middle, a small figure with arms stretched toward both, face tipped up. It's about choosing between staying and going, Lily explained, practical and matter of fact. The lady in the pretty clothes has to choose. But the little one in the middle doesn't understand why you can't just pick both. Sophie went very still. She crouched down slowly, bringing herself level with Lily, her voice careful and soft. It's really beautiful. Tell me about the little girl. She's sad, Lily said simply. Because the grown-ups are making it into a big complicated thing and she thinks it doesn't have to be. She thinks love should just be enough. What do you think the woman in the suit is scared of? Lily thought about it seriously for a moment, the way she did when she wanted to get an answer right. Maybe she's scared of being happy. Sometimes grown-ups are like that. They're scared of good things because they don't think they're allowed to have them. I felt that go through me like cold water. Sophie's eyes had filled. She looked down at the painting and then up at me, and for a moment there was nothing between us but the plain, undecorated truth of the thing. You're very thoughtful, she told Lily quietly. Love should be simple though, right? Lily pressed, hopeful. You love someone and they love you and you just stay. That's how the good stories go. It should be, Sophie said. And she looked straight at me when she said it. I stood there and let the weight of that settle. 4 years ago, I had told myself a story. The company was fracturing. The pressure was relentless. I was terrified of what I was becoming under the strain of it, and even more terrified of her witnessing it. So I had made myself into the villain of our story deliberately. Said things I knew would end it. Convinced myself that walking away cleanly was better than slowly pulling her under with me. I had been so certain I was protecting her. I had been wrong about almost everything. From across the room a small boy called out, his voice earnest and unself-conscious. Sophie dried her eyes quickly and went to him without hesitation, sitting beside him, listening with her full attention while he explained his painting about spending weekends in 2 different houses. Watching her with him, I understood something I hadn't let myself understand before. She had spent 4 years helping other people tend to their hurt while her own had stayed quietly open. Lily slipped her hand into mine. Mommy, why does she look at you like she's trying to remember something she lost? Because she is, sweetheart. Are you trying to remember it too? I watched Sophie bend over the small boy's painting, pointing at something, saying something that made him sit up a little straighter. Yes, I said. I am. That night I couldn't sleep. I stood at the window of my apartment at nearly 2 in the morning, the city laid out below me in quiet scattered light, and I stopped trying to keep the memories at arm's length. I let them come. The Sunday mornings. The way she laughed when something genuinely surprised her. The particular kind of stillness in a room she had been in. The version of myself I had been when I was with her, before I decided that version was too unguarded to survive. I had spent 4 years being very successful and quietly devastated. And I was tired of pretending those 2 things canceled each other out. 7 years ago, I was no one in particular. I had a startup that was burning through borrowed money, a studio apartment above a coffee shop, and the kind of stubbornness that people are either impressed by or tired of depending on the day. I ate badly, slept less, and spent most of my waking hours staring at a screen trying to build something out of nothing. That's where I met her. Sophie worked the morning shift. She had paint under her nails and a way of asking how you were doing that made you actually want to answer honestly. She wore second-hand band shirts and skirts that moved when she walked, and she had this unhurried way of moving through a crowded coffee shop like none of it could touch her. One Tuesday, after I'd been awake for something like 30 hours, she set a coffee down in front of me and said, "You look like you need more than that." "I need a miracle," I told her. "Fresh out of those. But I make a decent grilled cheese and I'm off in 15. That grilled cheese turned into a long dinner at a diner neither of us could afford, where the coffee was forgettable but the conversation wasn't. Dinner turned into walks through neighborhoods I'd lived near for years without ever really seeing. She knew where all the hidden murals were, all the small unlabeled gardens tucked between buildings. And the walks turned into evenings in her apartment, which was small and full of canvases and somehow the most alive space I'd ever been in. And all of that turned into love. The kind that reorganizes you from the inside. The kind that makes you look back at who you were before and realize you were only partially assembled. For 3 years we lived in that small space above the coffee shop. She painted by the window in the mornings while I worked. She celebrated every small thing I accomplished like it was worth celebrating, and on the nights when I was convinced everything was falling apart, she would just stay close and say quietly, "We're going to make it. Both of us. Together." And then we almost did. The company started gaining real traction in year 4. The kind of attention that changes things overnight. Investors. Contracts. Momentum. But it came wrapped in something I hadn't anticipated. The hours became punishing. The travel became relentless. The version of myself I'd been with Sophie, unhurried, present, soft around the edges, started feeling like a luxury I couldn't hold on to and build something at the same time. "You're disappearing," she said one night, finding me at my laptop at 3 in the morning. "It's temporary," I said, not looking up. "You keep saying that. When does temporary end?" I didn't answer. Because the honest answer was that I didn't know. And underneath that was something I could barely look at directly. I was terrified. Not just of the company failing, but of being seen. Of her watching me struggle and deciding I wasn't worth the trouble. I had come from nothing, and some part of me could never quite believe I deserved what we had built together. So when the pressure got to its worst, I made the worst decision of my life. I ended it. "This isn't working," I said one evening. The words felt wrong in my mouth even as I said them. She looked up from her easel. "What isn't?" "Us. I need to focus. I need to do this on my own. We can figure it out together. We always have." "No." I held the line even though every part of me was screaming not to. "I need to do this alone." I watched the confusion move across her face, and then the hurt, and then something worse than both. A kind of quiet, terrible clarity. "You're scared," she said softly. She set her brush down. "You're scared of how well this is going, so you're burning it down before it can burn you. I'm being realistic. You're being a coward." She was right. She was completely right. But I was too dug in to say so. I said something else instead, something I chose specifically because I knew it would land hard, something designed to end the conversation permanently. She left that night. Packed her things with a steadiness that was worse than any argument would have been. And walked out. And the apartment, which had felt small and full before, became enormous and hollow in about 30 seconds. I threw everything I had into the company. And it worked. By every measurable standard, it worked. The growth came. The recognition came. The life I had told myself I was building toward came together piece by piece. And not one part of it filled the specific shape she had left behind. I never stopped thinking about her. Not once. Not in 4 years. A quiet knock at the door brought me back. Lily stood in the doorway in her pajamas, stuffed elephant tucked under one arm, hair soft and loose from sleep. "Mommy. You're sad again." I opened my arms and she climbed into my lap without ceremony, warm and certain and real in the way that only children are. "Just thinking, baby. About the painting teacher?" "Yes." She was quiet for a moment, leaning against me with the comfortable weight of someone who trusts you completely. "Did you make a bad choice?" "Yes," I said. "A really bad one." She considered this. Can you fix it? I looked out at the city lights, steady and distant below us. I don't know if she'll let me try. She looks at you like she wants to, Lily said thoughtfully. Like she's waiting for you to say something important. I looked down at her. What do you think I should say? She answered without hesitating, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Sorry. And that you love her. And that you're not going to be scared anymore. I held her tighter. You think that would be enough? She thought about it with her particular brand of careful seriousness. She looked sad too, Mommy. Maybe she needs someone to say sorry just as much as you need to say it. I sat with that for a long time after she fell asleep against my shoulder. And somewhere in the quiet of 2 a.m, with the city spread out below us and my daughter warm and trusting in my arms, I made a decision that frightened me more than anything I had ever signed my name to. Tomorrow I was going to try. The next afternoon I picked Lily up from school and drove to the community center with both hands on the wheel and my heart somewhere in my throat. I told myself it was because she had been asking to go back every single day since our first visit. I told myself it was a simple errand, a kind gesture, a normal thing to do. The stories I tell myself are getting less convincing. Remember, we're just visiting, I said as we walked down the familiar hallway. Ms. Reed might be in the middle of something. She won't be too busy, Lily said with complete confidence. She likes us. I can tell because she smiles when she sees you even when she's trying not to. The room was quieter today. A small group of children working independently, soft music coming from a speaker in the corner, the particular peaceful hum of people making things. Sophie was sitting at a low table with a little girl who looked about 4, helping her mix colors on a plastic palette. Her voice was patient and unhurried, like she had all the time in the world. Just a tiny bit of yellow, she was saying gently, and watch what happens to the green. Colors are like feelings. They can change depending on what you put next to them. She looked up when we came in. And I watched the thing happen behind her eyes, the small internal negotiation between the part of her that responded to seeing me and the part that had learned, carefully and with good reason, to be careful. The little girl at the table spotted Lily and waved enthusiastically with paint-covered fingers. Lily went straight over. I approached Sophie slowly. I hope it's all right that we came back. She hasn't stopped talking about your class. Children are always welcome. Her voice was measured. Polite in a way that had an edge to it. And their mothers. She looked at me steadily. Depending on the mother. Before I could respond, Lily had already settled herself at the table and was reaching for a brush with the easy confidence of someone who feels at home almost everywhere. Ms. Reed, can you teach me to paint a real family? Not just the stick figure kind. Sophie sat beside her. And I watched her face do the thing it did around children, open up, settle, become the version of herself that didn't need any armor. What makes a family real, do you think? Lily considered this with her full attention. Love, she said. And staying. Choosing each other even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Sophie's hand went still on the palette. That's a really grown-up thing to know, sweetheart. Who taught you that? Mommy did. I felt warmth rise in my face. I honestly couldn't remember saying it. But apparently some part of me had known it long before the rest of me was willing to act on it. What kind of family do you want to paint? Sophie asked, her voice careful, controlled, with something underneath it that she was working to keep even. Lily scrunched her face and thought. The kind where nobody has to choose between going to work and being loved. Where mommy doesn't cry at night when she thinks I'm sleeping. Where someone helps make breakfast on Sundays and reads the long chapters at bedtime and teaches me how to do a proper braid. I couldn't speak for a moment. I had believed I was doing so well. Keeping it contained. Managing it quietly. But children don't see the version of yourself you curate for them. They see the 2 a.m. version. The standing at the window version. The version that goes still when a familiar song comes on. They see everything. Sophie's eyes found mine across the low table. And in them I saw something I recognized because I had felt it every day for 4 years. She remembered Sunday mornings. She remembered being the person Lily was describing without ever having met Lily. She remembered the shape of the life we had built and then I had dismantled. "That sounds like a really beautiful family," she said softly. And then she turned back to Lily and began to guide her small hands across the paper, gently and without rushing, the same way she had once helped me believe that the thing I was building was worth the effort. I sat nearby and watched, and said nothing, and felt the full weight of what I had thrown away and what I might, if I was very careful and very honest and very brave, still have a chance to reach for. "She's something else," Sophie said quietly, watching Lily add careful strokes to her painting. "She gets it from her father," I said. The words were out before I'd thought them through, and I had no idea why I said it. Sophie's brush slowed. "And where is he? This remarkable father?" "He was never really part of the picture. It was just me, and a lot of hoping, and figuring it out as I went." Her brush stopped completely. She looked at me then, not the careful guarded look she'd been giving me all week. A different one. "You always said you wanted children." "I wanted them with you." I hadn't planned to say that. It came from somewhere underneath all the careful managing I'd been doing, and once it was out there was no tidying it back up. Sophie went very still. "Mommy, look." Lily held her painting up with both hands, bright with accomplishment. We both looked. 3 figures in a kitchen filled with warm morning light. One in a dark blazer. One with paint-covered hands and loose hair. A small girl between them, all 3 reaching toward each other, fingertips almost meeting, nearly completing a circle. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," I said, and my voice was not entirely steady. "It's my wish," Lily said simply, in the matter-of-fact tone she used for things she considered obvious. "For Mommy to stop being sad all the time. For Ms. Reed to stop looking lonely when she thinks nobody's watching. For us to be a real family. The kind from the good stories." Sophie stood up. Quietly, without a word, she walked to the window on the far side of the room, arms folding around herself, back to us, looking out at the courtyard where a few children were still playing in the late afternoon light. "Lily, baby, can you start cleaning up your brushes for me?" Lily, for once, didn't argue. I crossed the room and stood beside Sophie at the window. We were both quiet for a moment, looking out at nothing in particular. "She doesn't know," I said quietly. "About us. About what we were. Doesn't she?" Sophie's voice was thick with something she was working to contain. "Because that painting looks like she knows exactly what she wants. And it looks like she's not the only one." I had no answer for that. Because she was right. That evening, after Lily was asleep, I drove across the city and parked outside Sophie's building. I had known the address without looking it up. I had known it for 4 years the way you know the words to a song you've tried to stop hearing. I sat in the car for a long time. Long enough for the streetlights to come on. Long enough for my hands to stop shaking, mostly. Then I went up and knocked. She opened the door in paint-worn pajamas, hair still damp, smelling like soap and something I had no business finding comforting after everything. She looked at me the way people look at something they weren't expecting and aren't sure yet whether it's good or bad. "Evelyn. How did you know where?" I never forgot. Any of them. I paused. "I drive by sometimes. When I can't sleep." She stood in the doorway without stepping back. "Not closed, not open. It's late." "I know. I'm sorry. I haven't slept properly in 4 years, and I'm done pretending that's not because of what I did." Something shifted in her face. "That's not my problem anymore." "I know it isn't. I'm not here to make it yours." I held her gaze. "I'm here because I think you haven't been sleeping either. I think you've been carrying this just as long as I have, and I think it's been costing you something every single day." Her grip on the doorframe tightened slightly. "What do you want, Evelyn?" "Actually. To say the things I should have said 4 years ago instead of the things I chose to say instead. To tell you the truth." To stop being the person who ran and try, for once, to be the person who stays. She was quiet for a long moment. Long enough that I thought she was going to close the door. Then she stepped back, just enough. 5 minutes. Her apartment was full of paintings, every wall, every corner. Easels at different stages. The familiar smell of paint and something faintly floral. But the work on the walls was different from what I remembered. Deeper colors. Harder edges. The kind of art that comes from someone who has been through something real and decided to put it somewhere instead of just carrying it. She stood across the small room from me, arms folded, waiting. I took a breath. I told myself I was protecting you. That's the story I used. The company was breaking apart and I was breaking apart with it, and I didn't want you watching that happen. I convinced myself that ending it cleanly was the kind thing to do. I paused. But the truth is I was terrified. Not of failing. I'd been failing for years, I knew how to do that. I was terrified of succeeding and still not being enough. Of having everything I wanted and finding out I didn't deserve it. You were the best thing in my life, and that made you the most frightening thing in my life. Sophie was very still. So you threw it away, she said quietly. Yes. I threw us away because I was convinced I would ruin you eventually. I told myself it was kinder to end it cleanly than to drag you into everything I was becoming. That wasn't your decision to make. I know. Do you? She turned from the window. Because that's what broke me, Evelyn. Not the things you said. Not even the way you said them. It was realizing that after 3 years, you didn't trust me enough to let me choose. You decided I was too fragile for your storms. Too soft for your ambition. You made the choice for both of us, and you never once asked me what I wanted. You're right. I would have chosen you. Her voice cracked on the words, but held. Every single day. Through the long nights and the panic and the pressure and all of it. I would have chosen you every time. And you didn't even give me the chance. The tears came then. I didn't try to stop them. I know, I said. I know that now. I don't think you do. She crossed the room to the small closet near the window and pulled out a canvas, turning it toward me with hands that weren't steady. It was us. Me at my desk, her curled beside me with a sketchbook, our shoulders touching, our bodies leaning gently into each other the way you do with someone you're completely comfortable with. She had painted it in warm golds and deep blues, and the whole thing just glowed with something quiet and certain and real. I finished this the week before you left, she said. I was going to give it to you for our anniversary. I couldn't speak. She kept going. Canvas after canvas, pulled from the closet and turned toward me one by one. Us in the kitchen. Us in the small living room, laughing at something. Us asleep, tangled together like we couldn't quite let go, even unconscious. I painted all of it, she said. Everything I wanted to remember. Everything I thought we were building toward. Why are you showing me this? Because I want you to see what it looks like when someone chooses love on purpose. When someone fights for it instead of away from it. She set the last canvas down. When someone believes in the thing even when the other person is too frightened to. I looked at the paintings spread around me and felt something give way in my chest. Something that had been braced for a long time. I was an idiot, I said. Yes. I was a coward. Yes. I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me. Yes. Her voice broke on the word. Just slightly. You did. We stood in the quiet of that small apartment surrounded by painted versions of everything we had been, and for a moment neither of us moved. Why did you keep them? I asked. She let out a slow breath. Because I couldn't let them go. Because even after everything, some part of me kept hoping you'd come back and actually fight. The way I would have fought for you. Sophie. She held up a hand. Don't tell me you love me. Don't apologize. Don't make promises that might dissolve the next time things get heavy. What if I mean them this time? What if you don't? What if success stops being enough and things get complicated again and I'm still not worth staying for? You were always worth staying for. I was the one who wasn't ready. Prove it. I didn't have a quick answer for that. She wasn't asking for words. We both knew I was good at words. She walked to the easel in the corner of the room where a half-finished canvas waited. A woman and a child, walking toward light. Behind them, a figure in shadow. Reaching. Not following. I started this the day you walked back into my life, she said. I've been calling it second chances. What happens at the end of it? I don't know yet. She looked at me steadily. That part depends on you. I stepped closer and looked at the painting. The figure in the shadow, arm outstretched, feet still. Caught between the familiar dark and the unknown light ahead. I want to follow, I said quietly. I want to stop standing in the shadow of everything I'm afraid of and actually step forward. With you. With Mia. I want to be brave enough this time to deserve it. Then be brave, she said simply. Choose it. Not because it's easy, but because it's real. I choose you, I said. I choose us. I choose to stop running. The 2 weeks that followed were quiet and careful. A slow rebuilding, like learning to trust weight on something that had been broken. I brought Lily to the art class every afternoon. I stayed to help with setup and cleanup. I found reasons to linger, and Sophie let me, which felt like its own kind of answer. We talked around the edges of things at first. Polite and gentle, two people remembering how to be near each other without the whole history of it becoming unbearable. But underneath all of that careful conversation, something was shifting. Slowly, the way light changes in a room when the season turns. Something that felt, cautiously, like the beginning of something repaired. Lily, for her part, had decided the situation wasn't moving fast enough and taken matters into her own hands. Ms. Reed, did you know my mommy makes the best pancakes in the whole world, she announced one afternoon, addressing the entire room with the confidence of someone making a public broadcast. Sophie glanced over at me with something in her expression I hadn't seen in 2 weeks. Something almost like amusement. Does she? And she sings in the shower really loud like she's in a concert. And she talks to her laptop when she's working late like it's actually going to answer her back. Lily. I said it as a warning. And she has a picture of you in her drawer, Lily continued, completely undeterred. The one where you're at the beach and your hair is blowing and you look really happy. She takes it out sometimes when she thinks I'm sleeping. I considered whether it was possible to simply cease to exist through embarrassment alone. Sophie's eyebrows lifted. For the first time since I had walked back into her life, she looked genuinely caught off guard. Is that right? She touches it like she's trying to remember what it felt like, Lily added helpfully. The blue dress one. You look really happy in it. Lily Elizabeth Mason. That is enough. But Sophie was smiling. A real one, not the careful professional version she'd been giving me. The kind that reached her eyes and changed her whole face, the one I had spent 4 years trying to remember exactly. It felt like watching a window open after a long winter. Well, she said softly. That's very good information to have. That night, as I tucked Lily in, she grabbed my hand and held it with surprising firmness for someone about to fall asleep. Mommy. Are you going to ask her to be part of our family? It's complicated, sweetheart. No, it isn't. She said it with the particular certainty of someone who has thought this through and found the answer obvious. You love her. She loves you. I love both of you. That's not complicated. That's just the answer. How do you know she loves me? Because she looks at you the same way you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention, she said. Like you're the most important thing. Like she'd do anything. She was asleep within minutes. I sat beside her for a long time in the quiet dark. The next morning I called my assistant and cleared my entire day. Something I hadn't done in 4 years. Then I drove to the community center early, before the classes began, before anyone else arrived. Sophie was in the art room arranging supplies, moving through the space with the calm routine of someone who found steadiness in preparation. She looked up when I came in. No Lily today? She's at school. I came to see you. Just you. Oh. One word, careful and open at the same time. I set a folder on the desk in front of her. My hands were not entirely steady. I have something I want to show you. Her expression shifted, a flicker of wariness moving across it. If this is about money, Evelyn, I don't want. It's not about money. It's about a choice. The right one, finally. She opened the folder slowly. Inside were architectural drawings, detailed plans, budget breakdowns, a full proposal for a new community arts center. 3 times the size of the current space. Proper studios, exhibition rooms, a small performance area, staffing for a team of working artists and teachers. She was quiet for a long time. Evelyn. Her voice had gone very soft. This is millions of dollars. It's an investment. In art. In children who deserve real resources and real space to grow. In second chances. I paused. In us, if you'll allow there to be an us. She turned the pages slowly, tracing the drawings with her fingertips like she was checking whether they were real. There's a condition, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes. What is it? I took a breath. I want you to run it. Be the director. Build the thing you've always deserved to build. Something that will last and matter and touch people long after either of us is around to see it. I held her gaze. And I want you to let me be part of your life. Not as a donor. Not as a board member. As someone who loves you. As someone who wants to choose you every single day, for as long as you'll let me. She looked down at the plans. Then back at me. And if it falls apart again? If things get hard and you get scared and you disappear? Then the center is still yours. Completely. No strings, no conditions, nothing I can take back. It's yours regardless. I stepped closer. But Sophie. I don't think it falls apart this time. Not if we choose each other instead of running from it. Not if we decide that what we have is worth being a little bit frightened for. She looked at me for a long time. And I watched the thing happening behind her eyes, the back and forth of it, hope and protection, wanting and wariness, the heart pulling one way and the memory of being hurt pulling the other. I'm scared, she said finally. Just that. Quietly. So am I. I'm genuinely terrified. I didn't look away. But I'm more scared of spending the rest of my life asking what if. I'm more afraid of the quiet version of this, the safe, lonely, wondering version, than I am of trying and having to be vulnerable. She almost smiled. Almost. And Lily has apparently already planned the wedding, I added. In considerable detail. There are notes. That did it. A real laugh, sudden and unguarded, the kind that comes before you can decide whether to let it out. She has not. Sunflowers, because they always face the light. A 3-layer cake, because we're going to be a family of 3. Dancing, because that's how you celebrate when you choose each other. I paused. She is very organized for a 6-year-old. Sophie walked to the window. She stood looking out at the courtyard, the same courtyard where I had watched her hold herself together 2 weeks ago, arms folded, trying to decide whether the thing in front of her was worth the risk. For years ago you said love was a distraction you couldn't afford, she said quietly. For years ago, I was wrong about almost everything. I came to stand beside her. I thought success meant sacrifice. I thought getting what I wanted meant giving up what I needed. I know better now. Success without someone to share it with is just a very well-furnished kind of empty. And if it gets hard again? If the pressure builds and you have to choose? Then we face it together. That's the whole point. No more deciding things alone and calling it protection. No more choosing fear and dressing it up as practicality. We talk. We stay. We choose each other even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. She turned from the window. And I saw the moment it happened. The moment she decided to be brave. It was small and quiet, just a shift in her expression, a letting go of something she'd been holding for a very long time. Okay, she said. Just that one word. Okay? Let's try again. Let's build something. Let's see what happens when we're both actually brave enough to stay. I crossed the room and she let me hold her, and it felt like the first honest breath I'd taken in 4 years. She smelled like paint and soap and something that had always just meant her, and when her arms came around me I understood, properly, what I had spent 4 years without. I love you, I said into her hair. I never stopped. Not for a single day. I love you too, she said quietly. Even when I was furious at you. Even when I was trying very hard not to. I never stopped either. We stood there in the morning light of the empty art room, surrounded by half-finished canvases and small chairs and the particular stillness of a space that belonged to children, and for the first time in a very long time everything felt like it was in the right place. And then from the hallway came the sound of small running feet. Lily burst through the door, slightly out of breath, eyes scanning the room and landing on us with an expression of profound personal satisfaction. I knew it, she announced. I told my teacher it was a family emergency and she said I could come. She threw her arms around both our legs simultaneously. I knew you'd choose each other. I've been knowing it this whole time. Sophie laughed through tears, crouching down to pull her fully into the hug. How did you know we needed you right now? Because the important parts are when families stick together, Lily said simply, as though this were the most obvious thing anyone had ever asked her. And choosing love is the most important part. I looked at these two people, this woman who had shown me what it looked like to love something fully and without condition, and this small fierce person who had somehow known from the very beginning what the rest of us were too complicated to see. And I understood, clearly and finally, that I had not just come back to fix something broken. I had come back to build something real. Okay, Sophie said, wiping her eyes, smiling at Lily. Tell me about these wedding plans. Lily's face became radiant. Okay, so first, sunflowers everywhere, because they always turn toward the light, the same way you two always find each other. And the cake has to have exactly 3 layers because we are going to be a family of 3. And there has to be a lot of dancing because that's what you do when love wins. And you both have to promise to choose each other forever, even when it's scary. Especially when it's scary. Forever, I said, looking at Sophie over the top of Lily's head. Forever, she said back. And she meant it. And so did I. 6 months later we stood in the courtyard of the new Community Arts Center as the afternoon light came through the tall windows and landed on everything warmly. The walls were covered in artwork made by the children who filled the place every weekday. The building was full and alive and exactly what it was supposed to be. Lily stood between us in a flower crown she had made herself, beaming with the quiet confidence of someone whose plan had worked out exactly as intended. I choose you, I said, holding Sophie's hands, feeling the familiar paint on her fingers. Every day, through everything, I choose you. I choose you, she said back, steady and sure. And I choose us. All 3 of us. Love over fear. Staying over running. Forever over safe and alone. As we sealed it, I heard Lily whisper to the small girl standing next to her, see. It's actually pretty simple when they stop overcomplicating it. And she was right. She had been right the whole time. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stay. Sometimes the most important choice isn't the one that feels safe, it's the one that feels true. And sometimes, if you're honest enough and humble enough and just brave enough, you get a second chance at the thing you should never have let go of in the first place. Thank you so much for following this story all the way to the end. If it meant something to you, please give it a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you never miss the next one. Drop a comment and tell me, has there ever been a moment in your life where you had to choose between fear and love? I'd really love to know. See you in the next one.